Hi, I'm Pete Brown, here in my home office and studio for this year's Microsoft Build event. I hope you're doing well, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch my session here today. So this build, I have two different sessions that go together. The second session is about building applications on Windows. So if you would like an introduction to building applications in WPF or console or Windows Forms or UWP or any of those related technologies, check out that video. In this video, I'm going to show you a few of the fun and useful things that I personally think make Windows a great developer box. This is an introductory video. There's a lot of stuff in here that I'm just going to show very quickly, and then I'm going to point you to resources which contain links to all the other videos and other content out there that you can use. In fact, before we get started, I'd like to share this link with you. If you go to this link for either of my two sessions, this will have everything that you need to use any of the things that I've discussed here. It includes all the help or links to all the help for the different products, as well as links to all the other sessions that I think have related content for this. So the first thing I'd like to show you here after that is some of the real basic things we've done for developers in Windows 10, and namely the developer settings in the settings application. So let's take a look here at the settings application. So here I went from home into update and security. And in the settings application here, I went and clicked for developers. And on the developer page here, we see we can enable developer mode, which allows us or makes it possible for us to sideload applications as well as unlock some of the other features here in Windows. We also have the device portal, which if you're developing for, say, HoloLens or IoT devices or anything else where the device may be remote to you or may be headless and you need some way of accessing that device remotely and doing administration and a bunch of other stuff there, then that device portal and the device discovery, either over the network or USB, are two things that you're going to want to enable. Most developers won't need to do that, however. And then we have some interesting kind of power user stuff that's folded in here. We know that developers like to have their file explorer set up a certain way and like a lot of the features that we have in there. So we've set up a bunch of easy access to those here directly inside the settings application. Now let's take a look at one of the other things that comes up a lot with developers. So let me switch over here on my wonderful screen here. This is great for settings in the applications, but one of the things that comes up a lot from developers and power users and musicians and some other groups that I work with that have kind of long-standing configurations that they need to rely on is, how do I manage updates on my Windows 10 PC? Say you're a developer and you need to have a PC that is frozen at a specific version that you can use for testing because that's the same version that your customers or your clients use, right? There are lots of options for managing that. So if I go into Update Security here and click on Windows Update, and if I go under Advanced Options, you see there are options here to enable me to pause updates. On this page, you're able to pause updates for a set number of days. That number of days is going to be different depending upon whether or not you're in the Windows Insider program or you're on a regular retail build of Windows, but it's usually sufficient for most developers. Again, though, if you are looking to lock down the PC for an indefinite amount of time, then you need to look at other ways to do that. So the supported way to do that in Windows is through group policy. So if I pull up the group policy editor here, and I go from computer configuration to administrative templates, and then look at Windows components, and then scroll down till I get to Windows Update, there is a setting here that is called Configure Automatic Updates. And that setting, if you set that to disabled, makes it possible for you to disable updates for as long as you need to. Now, I'm telling you this because you're developers and power users and you understand that disabling updates on your PC can have some kind of bad implications. You want to make sure that your PC is always up to date and always secure. But again, for those specific cases where you need to have a separate PC or a virtual machine or something like that parked at a specific version of Windows, then you can go in here, disable this setting, and that will give you exactly the level of power and configurability that you're looking for. Now, this is something that's in Pro and EDU and Enterprise, and it's not something that you'll get in Windows 10 Home, but this is really a pro level feature. You know, if you're looking to disable updates, then that's something that really is a pro thing to do. All right, now let's take a look at something else I really like here. So I'm going to pull up Terminal. All right, so this is the new Microsoft Terminal. So this is an open source terminal. It supports Command, it supports PowerShell, WSL, all the different types of shells that you can have on Windows can be surfaced through this terminal. Again, it's open source, it's on GitHub, so you can see all of the source that we have there. You might wonder why we did something like this, and of course, why we made it open source, right? So increasingly over the past several years, the command line has become more and more important. I remember when I started developing, the command line was really the only choice that you had. That was it. But then for, a couple of decades after that, developers were using more GUI tools in most cases and on most operating systems, as opposed to relying on the command line. It sort of fell out of vogue for a while. But now it's back in as people discover the kind of the productivity that you get from working at the command line, as well as the ability to script and automate processes and how simple that is to do using command line tools versus some of the more complex GUI based tools, right? So we knew that the old command was not sufficient for what developers want today. So, we couldn't modify that version of command very easily without breaking applications that screen scrape the stuff that's on showing up on the command terminal. So we created a brand new version of this, and we made it open source because we wanted to have you all participate in the process and be able to tell us what you want out of terminal. And this is, again, something that is releasing right now, and you'll see more information about that in some of the other sessions. Now, in addition to that, we took, here's terminal again here. We added in some commands that some of you have asked us for as developers. So, for example, if you're somebody who works on, say, like Docker containers or does other things with, containerized applications, you're often having to do, use the tar and curl commands from Unix and Linux, right? So we have implemented a native version of that here on Windows and included that right in the regular Windows command line. And so that's something that's super important. And it's a little tweak in there that makes it easier for you to get your work done without having to load other tools or bring up other features. So some of the fun things that are in terminal here, in addition to being able to zoom in with the mouse or have transparency in the back of the window, being able to have themes, etc., is support for, say, ligatures and fonts, so that we can have the same kind of font rendering that we do in Visual Studio, as well as support for built-in features like the emoji panel, being able to say pick the heart here and have that in your application. Now, all right, so a heart of the command line is probably not the most useful thing in the world, but I have seen applications that use the checkboxes and other types of extended character set stuff to be able to give you a richer command line experience without delving into the world of GUIs and the complexity that comes along with that. Now, you notice that the terminal here has multiple tabs open. And so these three different tabs, I happen to have the command prompt open. I have the preview 2 of PowerShell 7.1, which is based upon crossplatform.net. And then I also have here our WSL. And WSL is the Windows subsystem for Linux, and we have some great sessions that cover that. But in brief, this is probably one of the most useful things that we have added to this version of Windows 10 is WSL2. And WSL2 enables you to use all the same features and tools that you're used to using on Linux-based operating systems or Unix-derived operating systems. and incorporate that into your Windows development workflow. So no longer do you need to have, say, like a Linux box around just because there's some tools on there that you love to use. You can now use them directly in Windows. Now, the difference between WSL1 and WSL2 is fairly night and day in terms of how it's implemented. And again, we have some sessions that go into great detail on that. But some of the things that I do like with WSL2 are, for example, its ability to run Docker containers natively inside WSL2. So because of the implementation, because of the compatibility that we have there, you no longer need to have a separate Unix box just to do that type of work. I work with musicians and music application developers, and one of the things that they're really excited about with WSL is being able to use all of their cross-platform tools and workflows as part of their build chain and run that on the Windows box without, again, having to step out of their developer workflow. And in fact, you can mix and match your Windows commands and your Linux commands here all in the same environment. And again, it's really one of my favorite tools. I could talk for hours on this, but I think folks like Craig and others that are talking about this on the sessions at this year's build have done an excellent job covering those features there. So I'll leave that to them. Now, I'd mentioned that you can do some fun things with Terminal, with emojis and stuff, but some of the other things I like are really its configurability. So this is fully themable. You can, again, set transparency and stuff in the background. You can change the fonts. You can do all those types of things that you want to make Terminal the experience that you want. Now, I started programming back on the Commodore 64, so of course my favorite terminal here is this one, right? So probably not the most useful terminal out there, and the fonts are maybe a little chunky, but I love it. It brings me back. Now, there are many other resources and many other features that are part of part of what we have added to Windows 10. I've really only scratched the surface here of some of the things that we have added to Windows 10 and some of the related technology to make it a comfortable environment to be your dev box. So here are a few of the other ones that I think are super fun and important. Some of my favorites, like I love the work that we've done with Visual Studio to make it more cross-platform. And I love some of the other features that we have here and the external tools like PowerToys. Now, of course, if you want to learn more about that, please go ahead and click this link or visit this link, and you'll see all the different sessions that we have that are around developing on Windows, both for cross-platform as well as for building Windows applications. So thank you very much.